Guys, it's John, National Sports Entertainment, and I think this will be a fun one. I'm going to go into each division, kind of the narratives I see. Obviously, there's really only like one team from each division with a narrative. Some divisions don't seem to have any, and then some divisions have a few, so it's not going to be like a 32 team breakdown, but of the teams that matter, we'll be going into. Today was actually a good day. I'll cover that real quick. We were 50-50 depending on how tonight finishes. We missed the Jets early. Got the Bears covered. Missed the Bengals. Got the Dolphins. Got the Commanders as an underdog. That's another thing. We picked some dogs straight up, so that helped too. We missed the Colts. If I taken the cover, we would have won. Got the Texans. Got the Broncos. We got the Cardinals upset too. So it was a little better than even today. Especially with the Cardinals basically being 3-1. And we missed the next two, Packers, Giants. And then tonight, obviously, I got the Steelers covering. They got the weather delay going on right now. So, like a 50-50 day, but with the dogs, especially with the Cardinals in there, a second week in a row, we had definitely a profitable week. So, again, I've been picking based off of narratives and spreads. Some of the narratives I see, Jets are struggling. I wonder if they don't fire their coach in the next week or two. You know, I see a lot of parallels with teams like from the AFC to the NFC, where it's almost like a sister team. And there's a sister team to the Jets that I feel like they play the same way. A lot of the same components outside of quarterback, I would say. They have a lot in common, but I'll get into that. But I think the Jets, I went into this before, not a shocker. It'll be my first call, I guess, even though usually it goes the opposite. You know, you start with the most obvious. I think the Jets are going to be a wild card team. I think their story is going to be, does Rodgers still have it? I'm getting like Shane Falco vibes from this guy. So I think maybe they get Devontae Adams. Or maybe they just make a move in general, fire the coach. Their defense gets going. It kind of already is. And then they start winning games. They get in the wild card. Probably 10-7 seems to be the floor for the wild card. But maybe 9-8. We might have a tie. But I got them getting in the wild card. And if they're getting in the wild card, then it's pretty obvious I have the Bills winning the division. Again, I think the Jets sneaking in as an X Factor red herring team makes a lot more sense than them, just running the league, which is what I said at the beginning of the year. The Bills, I was wondering if they might start them off really bad, kind of like the Bengals are doing. But you think about it, it's Josh Allen. There's not many guys you can match up against Mahomes and have as close as you can to that Brady Manning vibe, and I do think Allen Mahomes is there, so you got to put him in the playoffs. Got to get him playing maybe another top quarterback in the playoffs. So I got the Bills winning the division, and I got the Jets getting a wild card. For the rest of the division, not a shocker. I have both teams as not finishing in the playoff race. Dolphins might be out of contention pretty early on just because there's a lot of teams in the AFC, Steelers, this whole division really with the Browns, outside of the Browns maybe, I feel like has a shot. And then, Chargers, even bad teams like Broncos doing good, so I don't see the Dolphins even being in the race. Same thing with Patriots. They can start rebuilding. I wouldn't even be surprised if they moved Tyreek Hill to a contender to, get a lot of flavor behind that team. So anyway, got the Bills, anywhere from a 1 to a 3 seed, probably a 2 or 3 seed. And I got the Jets as like a 6 or 7 seed. Steelers, I actually think they will finish with a winning record, but I don't think they'll make the playoffs. They made it last year, just a boring team, and I think they want excitement in the playoffs, so you're not going to have a ton of... I get you're going to have some fundamental teams. But I think they keep Tomlin's winning record alive. Even if they go like something crazy, like 8-1 or something. But I don't think they're going to... I think the Ravens are going to be the one to win this division. And you have a lot of play within the division. So what I think is going to happen, and I guess there's like 2 what people might call hot takes. Actually, I would say 3 that I thought of. The first of those 3 takes being not as much the Steelers not making the playoffs, but it's actually the Bengals making the playoffs. That's the first of, I would say, three. Definitely plus odd predictions at this point. So they always start off the story with the Bengals. Last year they didn't get it done. I feel like there's no reason to repeat it. So they get a convenient win against the Ravens. They get a convenient. Now they just lost this week, but they play them again, of course. So they get a convenient win there, and then convenient win against the Steelers, and all of a sudden they're right back in it. So that's how I think they're going to be able to have these divisions very close from on both sides. So anyway, we got the Bills as like a 2-3 seed, Jets as like a 6-7, and then I have the Ravens. Whatever the Bills are, I think the Ravens will be right next to them. So the Bills get the 2 seed, Ravens probably get the 3 seed or the 1 seed. So again, I don't have it exact. I do have the playoff simulator up, so I'm going to pull that up in a second, because I basically just went through the season and picked how I didn't pick every week, because again, I don't know what the spreads are going to be in 3 weeks. But I just did it contingent upon what I think makes the most sense for the playoffs. So anyway, I think the Ravens finish with probably a slightly better record than the Bills, and I think they win the division. And I think the Bengals, like I said, that's my first, I guess, hot take, get in as a wild card. Steelers and Browns both don't get in. That's just what I think happens. Of course, I could be wrong, but I think you get Burrow back in the playoffs. They're really talking about them different this year than last year. Last year, they're like all year they hinted at, oh, they could get in, and now this year they're acting like they're dead to rights. So I expect the win streak from the Bengals, and yeah, I think the Steelers don't make it in. Probably have a winning record though, and I think we're gonna have the Ravens take the division, like the Bills take their division, and then joining the Jets as one of the wild card teams, I have the Bengals. So we got 4 of our 7 teams. From this division, next I only have 1 team making the playoffs, and it's the obvious choice. I mean, again, some of my picks a little less obvious, like the Bengals. This one, it's the Texans. I do think the Jags are going to make a run, just because they just won and now they're playing in London, so you know they're going to win in London, and then they just need 1 win. They're 3-4, so to me, and I looked at the strength of schedules as well, things of that nature, division matchups left, all that stuff. I kind of looked at tiebreakers more this year than ever. I've been doing it early on in the year, and I've already noticed some favorable matchups or favorable tiebreakers for a lot of teams already. So anyway, I think the Texans just get in, get a good, again, something like 2 seed for the Bills, 3 seed for the Ravens, 4 seed for the Texans, something like that. And then we'll have, 5, 6 seed will be Jets, Bengals, something like that. And then the 1 and 7 seed. I have the Chiefs getting the 1 seed. I think they will win the division. Again, I think the whole point of a 3-peat, which is what we've been calling since we saw the 2-peat happening essentially, is the team has to look pretty unbeatable. Whether they win or lose in the Super Bowl, I think they have to go. They can't just limp in there like last year, and they obviously aren't doing that. So they're probably not going to lose many games. Actually, I think their first loss is going to be against the Niners, which is in like 2 or 3 weeks, and that would be an interesting one, wouldn't it? They haven't lost except since the last time they played in the Super Bowl. Again, kind of giving me Tribal Chief Roman Reigns vibes. They just talked about him, not losing a match since he last fought the guy, Cody Rhodes. It's also funny because people are bringing out how, like, I brought up how Gardner Minshew looked like the Young Buck, one of the Young Bucks. Now he looks like Matt Hardy. And then someone else mentioned how Burrow, like, dyed his hair, and he does now. He looks just like Cody Rhodes. So it's interesting what they do with wrestling. And you can see how mainstream it is now. That's why I genuinely believe they copy wrestling. But anyway, so Chiefs take the division. So the 7 seed, you probably know who I'm going to go with. It's going to be the Chargers. You got to get Jim Harbaugh in there. So I think as the season goes on, kind of like the Jets, but in a different way, we'll see the Chargers get it going. So those are that's my lineup for the AFC. Those are my main narratives. And like I said, I guess one kind of a hot take with the Bengals here. And then for the NFC, I have 2 what I would consider hot takes. And I don't think they're hot takes because they're my takes, but I think most people might just say, "Oh, you don't like this team," or whatever the case may be. What I will say is for both teams that I'm about to go into in the NFC, they are. I called this division perfectly last year in preseason, and then again in Week 5 when I did my official. I'll post that video because it's kind of the closest one to this one, where I kind of just went into the Super Bowl. But we'll be at that division in 2 seconds, and I called who was going to win in what order, like 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the division, which was not lining up at all with the records or Vegas. Not to be braggadocious, I just think I know some divisions better than others. This AFC East, I'm sorry, NFC East. Out of this division, simply because I think most of the exciting teams are in 2 divisions this year for the NFC, and the other 2 I feel like are kind of boring. I think we're going to get some more than one playoff team out of this division. I do have the Cowboys taking the division. I think they're going to take it and probably be like the 4 seed, nothing crazy. It could be a 3 seed. Again, I already set up my simulator, so I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, but it's kind of what I imagine. Again, I think Dallas, for once, nobody actually thinks they're going to do anything. And it's reminding me a lot of Boston, who played Dallas, by the way. But when I said they were going to win the championship, the whole of their response was basically, oh, they're just going to pull a Boston. And now with Dallas, like, that's basically what the sentiment is. Whereas years prior is like, oh, this might be different. And now you have all the narrators, your Tom Brady's, your Stephen A's, whoever it may be, kind of saying, well, I think Stephen A's a Cowboys fan, isn't he? But even he doesn't seem to be on them like he was. I watch First Things First. That's the highest rated show because they're the only entertaining one, in my opinion. And again, all those guys, at some point or another, will usually make a point of Dallas. They're all kind of in agreement. Dallas is not a contender. That's why I like them so much. So I'm kind of spoiling some stuff here, but not a shocker. I have them winning the division and doing really well. I also think the Commanders are going to get in as a wild card team, of course. And I think the Eagles are going to get in. I do think one of these years an entire division is going to get in. This year the NFC North is kind of looking that way, and it can happen. Last year I had predicted it for the AFC or NFC East because they were starting the NFC Beast narrative. And they all, the Giants just wound up tanking, but they had pretty decent years. But anyway, and in the AFC East, obviously was pretty weak, but I think pretty soon one of these whole divisions is going to get in. But I do think we're going to get, I thought Eagles maybe not, but I think with Barkley and Hurts, you just got to put him in just to get him in there. People will buy them as a team that could go all the way. So, yeah, I think Dallas gets in. I think Washington's exciting. You got to put them in, and the Eagles. I was really tossed between like taking another team out of the NFC South or North instead of the Eagles, or maybe, not as much instead of the Commanders, maybe instead of the Eagles. But I think the Eagles get in. They're showing a lot of Jason Kelce, by the way, so that could be a hint. So I think Dallas, again, Dallas probably like a 3 seed, 4 seed, and then like our 5, 7 seeds, something like that, will be the Commanders and the Eagles. I think our 1 seed is going to be the Lions. Now this is the division where I have 2, what many might call hot takes. And the first of those hot takes being, I do not have the Vikings making the playoffs. I really just don't think there's much there. There's a lot with Justin Jefferson and even Addison, and they're pushing them well. I think eventually Darnold is going to play pretty bad. They're going to have like a rotation of quarterbacks, and they're going to fizzle out. Again, I went into the matchups within the divisions. I know the Bears haven't played one division matchup yet. The Lions are about to play the Vikings. So very quickly, the Vikings can find themselves not leading this division. And then, again, it's not like they're up a bunch of games. They're up 2 games. So I have them I don't have them making the playoffs. I have the Lions, and I do think they'll be the 1 seed. Maybe the 2 seed. But I think for the matchups that I found, I think 1 seed makes more sense. And the other one I have is not the Packers, it's the Bears. I think it's going to be the Bears because of Caleb. I think you got to get him in there. And then you get Caleb and you get Daniels in there. I think that'd be interesting. Now, if one's not to get in, I'm going with Caleb getting the nod over Daniels, just because, again, it's Caleb. I honestly, a couple times this year, I've thought of Caleb Mahomes if they're going to try that. The only reason I don't think they will is the coach of the Bears. You can just tell he's just not a coach they're going to keep around. So I think they get in the playoffs. They might be another one, and this is the team I was talking about, by the way. So these are my second and third hot take. Vikings don't make it, and Bears make the playoffs. Again, between those two and the Bengals, all plus odds. Anyway, with the Bears, they remind me a lot of the Jets, really. Poor coach, solid, gritty, head-hunting defense. They have the weapons, they're just not really making it work. And you got a really old quarterback and a young one, so that's the only, where I said the quarterback, you don't really have much in common. But still, two quarterbacks that are winners. So I think there's too much hype around Caleb for him not to do something special. So I do think he gets in the playoffs. I'm just not buying the Packers hype. I don't think they're that entertaining of a team. I don't think Love is that big of a draw, especially if you compare him to Caleb. And yeah, so down the line, you're going to get Love Caleb. You're going to get Caleb versus the Lions, all these different matchups. And I think he'll win enough of them. And they've already beaten the Rams. Now, so have the Packers. And the Rams' record sucks anyway. But those are like the tie breaks I'm looking for. I think they play the Saints too, the Bears do. So again, those type of tiebreakers. And I know the Bears play the Commanders. So maybe only one does get in. And the winner of that game is going to be very, very revealing. I think they both get in. But my point being, I've noticed they set up a very easy strength of schedule for the Bears this year. And they're not the only team. So yeah, Bears, I think they get like the 7 seed or the 6, and the Washington gets like the 7. Or 1 seed's going to be the Lions. I think our like 3, 4, and 5 seed will be the NFC East essentially, which just leaves obviously the Niners. They did lose today. We predicted they would lose. But of course, they're not missing the playoffs, and I think they're going to have a pretty good record. I think they'll still finish with a 2 or 3 seed. And obviously, with the entire NFC East getting in and the Bears getting in, that means I do not think the Cardinals or the Seahawks are going to get in. So that's essentially what I think happens here. And now I can kind of go into the playoffs. Second. There we go. All right. The downside of doing videos live and not editing them. All right, so anyway, this is kind of what matches up with the picks that I have. You see that the reason I matched it up this way, and let's just go into this. The reason I'm not saying that all these teams are going to have these exact records. I know some might seem like, oh, they're going to have more wins than that, or this team's going to have more losses than that, whatever the case may be, like the Vikings. I'm not saying they're going to go 2-10 the rest of the year. But I just tried to pick the best I could. You see I have the Steelers with a winning record, but not getting in. But the reason I went about it this way is because I first went through it and got all my playoff teams. And it was like the Jets and Bills were matching up, and we had the Ravens, Bengals matching up, and we had too many division rivals matching up. And the reason, I believe, we picked so well, we did a couple playoff videos last year, and I said I'll post the one video for anyone that hadn't seen it. But I also did one I think it was week 16 or 17. And I went into specific reasons why certain teams could not win. Because if they did, it would have given us Browns, Ravens in the first round. I think we wound up getting them in the second round, and it made more sense to get Browns, Texans, because it was the oldest quarterback versus the youngest. And then we would have got a rematch of the NFC East, where it was Cowboys, Eagles, a bunch of stuff like that. And I'm like, well, this doesn't make any sense. They're going to give us some fresh matchups. And of course, we got Cowboys, Packers, and Eagles, Bucks instead. And I'm not saying you can't have any rematches in the playoffs. I'm not saying that every matchup, there can't be a division matchup. We're going to get them inevitably. But there's no way wild card weekend, right after, again, by the way, most of these division teams play each other the last couple weeks of the season. There's no way weeks removed. And that's what it was. We would have got Dolphins-Bills literally 2 weeks in a row. And I'm like, we're not going to get that. So we picked accordingly, and sure enough, we didn't get Dolphins-Bills. We got a much more exciting Chiefs-Dolphins. And what was it? Bills-Steelers. So that's the logic I'm using here. I don't think we're going to get Chiefs-Chargers and Jets-Bills, all these different matchups. So you see I have the Chiefs with the 1 seed, Bills with the 2 seed, Texans the lone survivor. You see I have them making a run, the Jags here. And maybe they do get it, but I don't think they do. There you go. I don't think they get in. I think they make a run, though, to make it interesting and to set up their move to London. And then the 4 seed, I have the Ravens. Maybe they finish a little better. Again, it's not perfect. And then our 3 wild cards, Chargers, Jets, and Ravens. And then on the other side, we got Lions, the Vegas favorites. I don't know if they still are, but they opened as the Vegas favorites to win the NFC. Niners at 2. We have one, as you can see. I have one rematch from the season, the Eagles, Cowboys, just by virtue of the fact that 3 of the 4 are getting in. We're probably, a rematch is probably inevitable there. And I have just the Falcons. Honestly, you could just replace them with the Saints or Bucks, and I would not be surprised at all. I think this division is going to do the same thing it always does. But I think with Bijan Robinson, I think with Kirk, I think with the few changes they've made, I think it makes sense to put Atlanta in there. So, and I just noticed this. Last year, like 3-4 weeks in a row, this was something that other people caught too. Like 3-4 weeks in a row, whatever Deion Sanders did in college, the NFL teams followed suit. So when he won, the Falcons, the Ravens, the Commanders, the Cowboys, and the Niners, they all won. When he lost, they all lost. This was like 3 weeks in a row. And then like on week 4, like it went away from the pattern. But I found it interesting. A bunch of people noticed it to the point, and I don't know which video it is, but anyone that has been following can confirm this. It was like the 3rd, 4th week of the season. I'm like, we're going to do a Deion parlay. And we parlayed Colorado and all 5 of his teams. And I forget I don't even know if he took them or faded them, but we did whatever it might have been when the Commanders, it wasn't when the Commanders played the Cowboys, because that's 2 of his teams playing each other. But it was like week 3, week 4, we noticed it. And it was like 100-to-1 payout type deal. And sure enough, every one of the NFL teams, I believe, all won. All of his former teams, as did Colorado. Colorado's looking pretty good this year. And I had just noticed I have all of Deion's teams making the playoffs. Commanders, Cowboys, Ravens, Niners, and where's the 5th one at? I always forget his 5th team. Falcons, there we go. So that's interesting. I'm curious to see baseball, actually. I know the Reds didn't get in, so I know it's not true to baseball. Oh, that was it too. It did happen with baseball. Somebody pointed out the first week it happened, not only did all of his football teams win, but all of his baseball teams won. Jackson State won. It was pretty crazy. But anyway, I think all of Deion's teams get in the playoffs, and I think Colorado does some pretty big things too. So that brings us here. We got the Harbros, and I don't think it makes much sense to continue the fairy tale. I think him getting to the playoffs and being able to match up with his brother is enough, and I think the Ravens advance. They just went to the AFC Championship. I don't think they're going to be getting knocked out in the first round. And then we got Jets Texans. This is an interesting one. The Jets are a good red herring, and obviously with the Texans, you got CJ. You have a lot of stories. The Jets would be considered an upset, and it's probably going to be the only one. So I actually do have the Jets winning this one. And the Bengals, again, just making the playoffs, I feel like would be enough. Sure, they could win because he's like the main rival for Mahomes, and I don't think the Chiefs, I can't remember exactly who they'll line up with, but I'm going to go with Josh Allen. Then on this side, you see it's convenient again for the Bears. They get the Falcons. They get a team that they could easily beat. I think they will. and Eagles Cowboys. I think Eagles are another first round elimination. And then they might even talk about moving Hurts. They'll definitely fire Sirianni. I think you'll have a lot of cleaning up as far as the Eagles are concerned. And then honestly, I could see the Commanders actually doing it, but not if Caleb does it. The Niners are still a strong team. Again, just for the same reason the Ravens, I have the Niners advancing here. So that puts us to the divisional round. And we get, again, some pretty good matchups. We have a rematch of Lamar and Josh Allen. And we got the Jets, Chiefs. And here, maybe a little too obvious, but I think we're just going to get this. We didn't get it in last year's AFC Championship. And I think, just like Brady, Manning, we're going to get it multiple times throughout these guys' career. So I think we are going to get Chiefs, Bills. I don't see the Jets going far. I think they just get in the playoffs to make some waves. And then on the NFC side, we do have a rematch. Again, we're going to get some division rematches. This is a fun one anyway, especially in the playoffs. So I imagine the Bears would probably win a game in the regular season against the Lions, at least one of them. And then they can kind of tease, can they upset them again? Maybe they win both. And a big part of me wants to pick the Bears. Bears-Niners would be interesting. Honestly, either one versus the Niners would be interesting because, once again, we would have first versus last. But Bears-Niners would be really funny because you have, like, the opposite guys, right? You have Caleb, who's super athletic, and then Brock, who's, like a mini Tom Brady as far as his athleticism. And I do like the angle of first drafted versus last drafted. But anyway, I think you got to still have solid teams. And I don't think the Bears are quite ready to go to the NFC Championship. If they were to, then I do have them go into the Super Bowl, just so you know. If they do get past this stage, then I think they'll pull the trigger and give us Mahomes, Caleb. But I don't think they're ready yet. And I'm honestly probably giving them more credit than they deserve. I don't think many have them even making the playoffs. But I just think they have a lot set up for them. And then on the other side, you know what? I really do like the Cowboys. I just think they'll beat the Niners. I don't think many people have them beating the Niners. And the Niners are going to be at home. So there's a lot of reasons I think people would be on the Niners in that matchup. And then that obviously puts us right here where we're going to have one very familiar matchup and one that isn't that unexpected. Chiefs, you guys already know I have them going. And I like this for a few reasons. Again, I don't think anyone's expecting the Cowboys. I do find it interesting. Boston just played Dallas. They do that kind of stuff all the time. And it gives us Cowboys versus Indians, which is pretty interesting in a political year. So that's what I think we're going to wind up getting. Again, to the person that told me Commanders, Chiefs, I do like that idea because you get Commander-in-Chief, right? And that's pretty funny. The President, Commander-in-Chief. So I do think that's an interesting double entendre, but I just don't. If there's going to be a team that's not Lions, Cowboys, Niners that goes to the Super Bowl, I think they'll pull the trigger on the Bears. I really do. I don't think it'll be the Commanders. And then, of course, I think they complete the three-peat. I don't think you're going to go that far just to not complete the three-peat. So this is what I think happens. Again, it's not going to be perfect, but essentially the matchups that I think make the most sense. And again, I know some like Vikings might seem like, nah, they're definitely going to get in. With the way they have the division set up and the structure set up, the tiebreakers, it's really not that inconceivable, in my opinion, for them to fall out. Just like I don't think it's inconceivable for the Bengals to make a run and get in. And then, of course, the Bears, they're just kind of hanging in there. I do think they're probably going to get walloped this week because there's no way Trevor's losing in London. But as far as the division matchups, I think they'll do pretty good this year and wind up usurping the Vikings. So, yeah, I'm curious what you guys think. I kind of, alluded to a lot of teams that I liked, but I wanted to do an exact, concrete pick of all the teams. And yeah, I'm just curious what you guys think. If you think I have some of these teams overvalued, undervalued, some that you think, nah, there's no way they get in. I do love the hardball just to start off the playoffs. I think they won't want to resist on that one. And yeah, I think, the Bears, if you look, they have a pretty easy schedule. They could be one game, from the NFC Championship. I don't think they do it. If they had a different coach, I would say, yeah, maybe they could pass the Lions. But again, Lions Cowboys is a much bigger draw. And I think that's what they're going to wind up going with. So yeah, I just wanted to do a full breakdown of every division, who I think makes the playoffs, and exactly kind of what matchups I think we're going to get. And then our winners, which is going to be Mahomes with the three-peat, because that's the only way they can ever argue he's in the same breath as Brady. He's got to win like 5 more, and he's already like 30 something. So I just don't think that happens. I think you have to give him the three-peat now, and then they can compare him to Jordan and be like, oh, he didn't play as long, but it's like Jordan and LeBron. However they, even though again Brady's got more rings, they can say Mahomes had the best prime of anybody, and if that's where they're trying to go with it, and he's still have Swift involved, political year. You got Mahomes and his wife who apparently like Trump, and then you got Kelsey and Swift who hate Trump. It just kind of writes itself. And then going up against America's team, the natives versus the, Native Americans versus America's team. It's just very, very politically soothing in my opinion, and ironic. So, yeah, I think with the way everything lines up, we get Cowboys and Chiefs. So take care and happy earnings.